I'm Sarah.
And I'm Tony.
And I'm Robert.
And we are
the Real Estate Robinsons.
If you guys want to learn the ins and outs of investing in short-term rentals, you would not want to miss today's video. What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. I'm excited for today's guest. We have an absolute rock star, Robert Abasolo's on the channel with us today. Rob, thanks for joining us today, brother.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for having me on the channel. I'm a big fan. Yeah. I know we've been hanging out, but I'm a big fan.
No, man. Robert, you've got a lot going on, and before we really dive into all the cool things you've got cooking, I want to share with the viewers kind of where your portfolio is today. So how many Airbnbs are you currently running? What states do you guys operate in?
Sure. So I have at the moment, 11. Tomorrow I'll have 10 because I just sold one of my properties. But yeah, I have 5 glamping units, and I have a couple of tiny houses, a small home, which is a 800 square foot home, and then I have a chalet here in Gatlinburg, and I'm currently working on a tiny house village about 30 minutes north of here. Yeah. I think it's north of here.
And that's maybe the cool part. I want to get into the tiny village. So Robert, how long have you been investing in short-term rentals?
So after mathing this out with you off camera on the third take, 4 years. I've been an Airbnb host for 4 years.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people, and this is me talking to the viewers right now, is that it's easy to look at Rob and all the cool things he's doing and saying, man, why am I not killing it the way that Rob is? But it's because you're 4 years into it. And a lot of the folks that are in our audience, especially my audience from the Bigger Pockets podcast, these are newer investors or people that haven't gotten started yet. So I just want to make sure you guys don't get discouraged when you hear all the cool stuff that he's about to do. Just kind of keep in mind that he's 4 years into this. So
yes, it's been a journey. It's been a long journey and a really, really great, fruitful journey. But Rome was not built in a day, and neither was my portfolio. And I'm really proud of where it's progressed in just even the last year of those 4 years.
Yeah, you've killed it, man, the last year. And I want to talk about the tiny village. And we're in Tennessee right now. We're in the Smoky Mountains. We're in our cabin here in Pigeon Forge. Rob has 50 acres in Sevierville, so we're going to talk about that. But before we do, Rob, tell us about how you got started. Like, what was it that drew you into short-term rentals?
Sure thing. So I've always been kind of like a small entrepreneur in that I've always been hustling. I'm trying to figure out what is that thing that I can do and make money at that I'm good at, right? And I've kind of cycled through so many things in life, right? I think the very first thing I ever sold was like vitamins or something like that. I was in middle school. But, you know, fast forward to about 4 years ago, we moved to LA, and we were renting a small apartment. It was a 660 square foot apartment, about $1,800 a month. And this was coming from Kansas City, where our mortgage was like $1,000 for somewhere that was like 3 times the size. After living in this tiny apartment for 6 months and paying just under $2,000, I was like, I can't pay this to a landlord anymore. I was like, we have to buy a house. And so my wife was like, are you sure we can afford that? And I was like, absolutely not, but we're gonna make it work. So then it came time where we had to break the lease, and it was gonna be $2,000 to break the lease. We could either do that, or I heard about this thing called the Airbnb at the time, and I told my wife, like, hey, what if we just Airbnb it? I'm sure we could break even. You know, we let strangers into our home. What's the worst that could happen? And she was like, I guess it's, you know, another one of your crazy ideas. And I was like, I think it's gonna work. And so I listed it on Airbnb, and turns out that like the day that I listed it, I got like a $1,400 reservation on it. And I was making consistently $1,000 to $2,000 a month. And that's where I was like...
So this is cool, because I want to pause on this, right? Because there's different ways to invest in short-term rentals, right? What you just described is called rental arbitrage, right? Where you don't own the property, but you have it under a lease with the landlord, and you in turn lease that property or rent that property out on Airbnb. What we do now is we actually go out, we buy the properties, we own the properties. Like this house that we're sitting in, I own the mortgage on this house, right? I actually own the property. What do you feel is the benefits of owning the real estate versus doing something like rental arbitrage?
Yeah, totally. So I've done a little bit of everything at this point, and I've kind of realized the good and the bad with everything. And I would say, for me, the big differentiator between rental arbitrage and actually owning it is that whenever you own it and it's part of your portfolio, that's something that actually builds your personal wealth, so that when you retire at, 65, right? When you retire, you have an entire kind of stockpile of different properties that you can lean on to sell, do cash out refinances, the rental income. Whereas rental arbitrage is a great way to get into the industry, I think, but the problem with it is as soon as that lease is over, that business is over. That way of making money is over. And so there is no long term. It can get you rich, but it's not going to build wealth, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. So we bought this property 6 months ago, well, 5 months ago. We paid $590,000 for it. If we were to list this cabin today on the market, we could probably get $700,000 for it. And had we done this through rental arbitrage, we wouldn't have been able to reap those benefits, right? Like all of that capital gains goes towards the landlord instead of you as the person running the Airbnb. So you get started with the rental arbitrage. What happens from there? You kill it, you smash it. What happens next?
Yeah, so at that point I was making $1,000 to $2,000 a month. That was a lot of money for us, like a lot. It's still a lot now, but for us that was a game-changing amount of money, especially knowing that, hey, what if I just rented more apartments and it's all good to go? So I did that with a couple of partners and we rented 2 more, but I think we quickly started, we were doing it the wrong way. We were just leasing the apartments, throwing them up on Airbnb. We weren't telling the management, don't do this. It really caused a lot of problems for us. But we quickly realized that this is a legitimate business. Why hide this from management, do this and that? So we're like, how can we legitimize ourselves in every single way possible? So that's when we started looking at acquiring more real estate. So for me, I kept that lease running for about 1.5 years, I think. I bought a house in LA for $624,000. That mortgage was $4,400. It's a lot of money. My wife is a teacher. I'm a writer. You know, we were making okay money, but not $4,400 a month money, right? And so I knew when I saw this house, there was this like I guess it was a crawl space bonus room that had been converted into a studio apartment. It was about 300 square feet. And I told her, I was like, well, hey, just based on our other apartment, I think we can make between $2,000 and $3,000 a month on Airbnb. She's like, are you sure? And I was like, no, but we got to try it because it's better than paying $2,000 on a tiny apartment. And so she was like, all right, let's do it. And I was like, great. And that's exactly what happened.
And I think it's such a cool and unique way to look at real estate investing, because I've spoken with so many investors who found this listing that was either stale or it looked kind of funny because it had this weird crawl space at the bottom, and the average buyer kind of sees that and they don't see the opportunity that's in it. But for someone who's a true real estate investor, for someone who's a true entrepreneur, you saw that, you were like, hey, this is a way for us to really maximize our investment in this property. So what happens after you guys buy that house? Does it work out as planned? Does it crash and burn? What happened?
No, it worked out. I mean, best month we were making I think our best month was like $3,300, and that meant that on our mortgage we were only paying like $1,000 to $1,400 a month roughly to live in a $624,000 house. So I'm like, well, what? Let's build a tiny house in the backyard. And my wife's like, can we afford that? And I was like, I don't think so.
Had you ever built a tiny house before that? Okay.
No, I was not handy at all. But I renovated that studio because it was gross on the inside. So I pulled off cabinets and I did a backsplash out of like pallet wood, and I was trying to keep it super scrappy, right? And the 4-year anniversary of this was actually yesterday. I got a notification on my Facebook, so it's all fresh on my mind. But I did a lot of work in about 2 to 3 weeks to get that studio ready, and I felt, based on what I accomplished in that amount of time, if I had 6 months, I was like, I think I can build a tiny house. And so I pretty much hired a small crew, and I was a general contractor on that build for the most part.
All right, so you've never built a tiny home before, but you pitched your wife on this crazy idea of building this in your backyard. What happens from there?
So I build it, my best friend moves in, and I gave him the bro rate, and he was paying me like $1,500 a month. So that, plus what I was making on my studio downstairs, I was living mortgage-free in LA. And fast forward to today, my house is worth about $1.1 million now. We've cashed out and done a couple of things. Our mortgage now is closer to $4,000, but now that the entire house is on Airbnb, generating pretty close to about $8,000 a month.
Wow.
So we're looking at about a $4,000 profit on that house.
And your journey into building that tiny home kind of sparked some more tiny home adventures elsewhere, right? So tell us quickly about what those were.
Yeah, so I got so much good feedback from all my neighbors and friends and everything about how nice my tiny house was, but that tiny house was on a real budget. It was $72,000. So I was like, well, what if I built it out in Joshua Tree, but I really blew it out and spent twice as much? So that's what I did. I built a tiny home in Joshua Tree. I call it Casita Conejo, and it's basically a 300 square foot home. It's got a few more bells and whistles, but that thing is really crushing it every single month too. And then I built another 800 square foot small home about 5 minutes down the road from that one.
So you took this simple concept, you kind of proved it in your own backyard, literally, and then you took that to a more kind of established Airbnb short-term rental market, and you've been killing it ever since. So you've got a ton of experience, Rob. I want to use some of that experience to answer some questions from the audience. So if you're ready, let's dive in.
Yeah, let's do it.
So we get a lot of questions on Instagram, Facebook, and all these other places, so I want to bring Rob in to answer some of those, so let's dive in. So I'm pulling these questions from Instagram. So the first question comes from @MC_Mirror_Homes. So his question is, what are your thoughts on using a property management company for short-term rentals?
Yeah, so it depends on your time, how much of it you have. If you have time, I think if your portfolio is anywhere from 1 to 5 units, it's really something that you should be managing yourself. unless you just don't have the time, if you have a full-time job and your own side hustles and a family and everything like that, then you could consider spending the 15 to 25% on a property manager. But I have 10 units right now and I self-manage all of them. I think once you automate your processes and you have your dream team and everything like that, then there's really no reason to bring in a property manager on a smaller scale.
Yeah, and I think I'd agree with that too. I think time is a big component to making that decision, but also desire, right? Like I've met some people that just have no desire to do everything that comes along with running a short-term rental. And although you can automate a lot of those things, there's still guest communication that has to happen. You still have to manage your pricing. We just had a leak in our cabin that we're sitting in today. We have to take care of that. So there's always some level of involvement, and you just have to ask yourself if running a small hotel, at a small scale is something that you want to do. You can still get the returns, but it's a personal decision.
It's true. It is. I agree with that. Let the record show.
All right, so the next question comes from @still_Caleb, and his question is, how has COVID impacted short-term rentals in 2020, and are those concerns still relevant in 2021?
Yeah, that's a solid question. I think I get that asked by my audience quite a bit. So I would say the very first month it did affect me because everyone had to cancel, and me and my business partners had to make the decision to just refund everyone across the board and not fight people on it and just say, hey, we're gonna let it go. It's gonna suck here for about a month or two, but it'll be okay. After the dust kind of settled after that first month and all the stay-at-home orders were kind of lifted at that point, people had a cabin fever and they wanted to travel more than ever. So weirdly enough, we have thrived during COVID like never before. I've seen record-breaking months every single month. My tiny home in Joshua Tree was typically grossing like $6,000 to $7,000 a month, and every single month it would be more and more. December I grossed $9,700. Yeah, I think we're in a new season of being an Airbnb host where people are going to start traveling, I think, domestically more than ever.
Yeah, we started our business kind of in the middle of COVID. So we bought this cabin in August of 2020. Kind of right in the thick of things, and we have absolutely killed it. Like you said, there was kind of pent up demand for people to get out of their houses, and I think that what we're seeing isn't like a flash in the pan where it was just because of COVID. I really do think that even post COVID, this desire to kind of get out and not be at home all the time is going to stick. So
yeah, for sure. I mean, to put it in perspective, I was on my best property, I was booked 100% before COVID. I was booked 100% during, except for that first month, and I probably will be booked 100% afterwards. You can't just put it on autopilot. You still have to manage your business. Like you're saying, we automate things, but we still have to step in as hosts and stuff like that. So there are a lot of things that I did on my side of things that made my listings more appealing to people during COVID. And so I think that really helped me thrive during the season.
There you go, Caleb. If you haven't started, get started. All right, so our next question is from Estevala, and her question is, how do you find the right cleaning team to prep your property in between guests?
Okay, I think there are several ways to do it. My first one is I always lean on the recommendations of my realtor. I think a good realtor that's been in the industry for a while has an entire roster of vendors that they work with. So cleaning teams, contracting teams, handymen, they all come from my realtor. If their Rolodex is not super thorough, then I typically try to find another realtor that can provide something like that for me. A contracting lead is more important than a cleaning lead. So if I'm unable to get a cleaning lead from my realtor, then I turn to Thumbtack typically.
I've never used Thumbtack. That's interesting.
Yeah, and it's an app for your phone.
Okay. What I've used is, like you said, realtors, they've been great, but also Facebook groups. There might be really active Facebook groups for short-term rental owners. Where we're at in the Smoky Mountains, there are at least 3 super active Facebook groups for owners in this market. Same thing for Joshua Tree. So if you're looking for good places to find referrals, Facebook groups, realtors, it's a great place to start. So our next question comes from @TheFranco_Guy, and Franco's question is, how are you financing your short-term rental?
Creatively, carefully, and everything in between. It kind of depends. I mean, when I built my tiny house in Joshua Tree, I did a HELOC for that. My parents kicked in $40,000 because they're 50-50 partners on that one, and a 0% interest credit card. And then at the end of that, I did a cash out refinance and put it all into one beautiful build. My second one, my small home in Joshua Tree, we did a new construction loan. On other deals, I have other partners fund it, and then the agreement is, if they fund it, I will teach them, kind of my ways and show them my philosophies and policies and processes and everything like that. So if you come from a place where you don't have a lot of money, but you have hustle, tenacity, and everything like that, then you can find other people to finance it for you and do all the work. Or if you have a good job and low debt to income ratio, then you can look at new construction loans or vacation rental loans.
I love the HELOC. For those of you that don't know what that is, that's a home equity line of credit. So basically you're able to tap into the equity that you have in your home and get a loan against that equity, and tons of real estate investors use that strategy to fund their deals, whether in short-term rental or the long-term rental space. We've purchased all of ours actually with 10% down vacation home loans. There are some restrictions on how many you can have in one market, so it definitely helps to have partners as you scale, but it's a great way to get into a property with very low money down, as opposed to what you typically have to put down for an investment property, which is 20%. So love that advice, brother.
Yeah.
All right, so our last question comes from @Spencer_Shore. And Spencer's question is, do you furnish your STR yourself, or do you pay the extra money and hire a professional?
This is going to depend on your skill set. If you're not a designer, if you don't have an eye for design, or if you don't know someone that can help you with it, then you absolutely should pay a professional to do that. I typically furnish my own stuff. Me and my wife fight it out on the design a lot, but through that collaboration, I think we come up with like really special places.
Where do you find an inspiration for your design? Because I think that's what we struggle with, right? We hire all of our design out for the most part, right? Like this came pre-furnished, we kind of left it how it was, but our new builds or things that we're buying new that aren't pre-furnished, we hire it out. Where are you finding the inspiration, the motivation to kind of put all these different pieces together?
I typically lean on Instagram quite a bit. There are about 5 to 10 designers that I follow that I'm like, I really like what they do. And so anytime I see something, I have a saved folder in my Instagram, and I'm like, interiors I love, bathrooms I love, exteriors I love, wallpapers I love, that kind of thing. So that whenever I'm mood boarding and creating the vibe for my places, I'm leaning on those different things that I've saved, and that's how I kind of take a lot of risks, is seeing the risks that other people have taken and then kind of putting my own spin on it. But at the same time, I would say even past that is looking at other Airbnbs in the market. So whenever I'm going through and I'm assessing my competition, I look at every single listing in my neighborhood. It could be 100 different listings, and I look at their art, I look at their appliances, I look at their cabinetry, everything, and I say, what do I like about this place? What don't I like about it? How could I come in and beat them if I were to build a new construction in that area?
Yeah, I love that approach of looking at your competitors, both from like a design standpoint, but even from like a pricing standpoint. What time is their checkout? Like I do really thorough like competitive analysis as well, just to make sure that we're stacking up in the right way. So Rob, I love the advice, brother. If people want to learn more about you, if they want to get in touch with Rob, where's the best place for them to go?
You can subscribe. You can smash the subscribe button on my YouTube channel. It's called Robuilt, ROBUILT, or follow me on Instagram. Same thing, Robuilt.
There you have it.
There we have it. There we have it. We did it, man.
Awesome.
And also, don't forget to subscribe and like to this video.
Absolutely.
So we can get your sub count up.
Thank you, Rob. We're still new to YouTube. I forget that I'm supposed to make those.
Yeah, we should have said at the beginning, the video was ruined.
Thank you, guys. We'll see you on the next video. All right, so I hope you guys enjoyed that video. Rob shared a ton of great knowledge.
Excited to have him on the show of the Real Estate Robinsons. We look up to him in both the YouTube space and tiny home space. So thank you, Rob.
If you guys haven't already, please like this video, subscribe to our channel, turn on the notifications. We'll be sure to keep bringing you more great content just like this.
And if there's anyone you guys think we should interview, let us know in the comments below. We'd love to bring in more guests for you guys.
Last thing, if you're not already, give us a follow on Instagram. I'm at Tony J. Robinson. She's at Sarah Rad, and we will see you guys in the next video.
See ya.